Carol Dweck and the Psychology of Mindset. Good afternoon. Last time, we sat inside a single perfect moment of flow, total absorption, effortless focus, but real growth rarely happens in one glorious moment. It happens across years of unglamorous practice, wrong turns, and failure. So today we ask, what determines whether a person can survive that long and glamorous stretch at all? Here's a simple scene to hold on to. Two students receive the exact same failing grade on the exact same difficult test. One walks away thinking, I'm just not good at this. The other walks away thinking, I'm not good at this yet. That single word, yet, turns out to carry enormous psychological weight. We arrive in the 1970s and follow the work through the 2000s with the American psychologist Carol Dweck. Early in her career, Dweck studied how children respond to failure and noticed something strange. Some children treated the difficult problem as an exciting puzzle, actually increasing their effort after setbacks. Others treated the same setbacks as a verdict on their basic worth and gave up almost immediately. Dweck spent decades investigating this difference, eventually publishing her most influential thesis in the 2006 book, Mindset: The New Psychology of Success. Her research crystallized a distinction that would ripple across education, business, sports, and parenting. Dweck proposed that people generally operate from one implicit beliefs about ability. A fixed mindset holds that intelligence and talent are largely static traits you either have or don't. A growth mindset holds that abilities are developed over time through effort, strategy, and persistence. The consequences of this single belief are enormous. People with a fixed mindset tend to avoid challenges since failure feels like exposing a permanent limitation. They see effort itself as a bad sign. If you were truly talented, the reasoning goes, you wouldn't need to try so hard. People with a growth mindset, by contrast, tend to seek out challenges, treat effort as the very mechanism of improvement, and interpret setbacks as useful information rather than a verdict on their identity. Crucially, Dweck found that these mindsets aren't fixed personality traits themselves. They can be deliberately taught and shifted, often through something as simple as changing the specific language used to praise and give feedback. Sociologically, mindset theory exposes something significant about how institutions and internationally shape belief at scale. Praise, like you are so smart, well-intentioned, common in schools and families, was shown to actually reinforce fixed mindset thinking, since it implies success reflects an inherent trait rather than a process. Praise like you worked so hard on that reinforces growth mindset thinking instead. This gives educators and organizations a concrete lever for reducing achievement gaps. This mindset can be shaped by the language of feedback systems themselves. An entire school, workplaces, or family culture can unintentionally manufacture fixed mindset thinking in exactly the students or employees who most need encouragement to persist through difficulty. It reframed inequality not just as a matter of unequal resources, but as an equal exposure to the kind of feedback that builds a durable, resilient sense of one's own capacity to grow. Psychologically, mindset theory builds directly on Bandura's self-efficacy, but adds a crucial mechanism explaining why self-efficacy sometimes fails to develop or fails to last. A fixed mindset can undermine self-efficacy at the very first setback, since failure is interpreted as revealing a stable trait rather than signaling a fixable temporary gap in strategy or effort. That connects to a broader psychological principle, how we explain our own failures and successes to ourselves. What psychologists call attributional style shapes our subsequent motivation from far more than the raw event itself. Two people can face an identical setback and walk away with entirely different beliefs about their own failure capability, based purely on the internal story they tell about what that setback actually means. But mindset theory has also faced substantial pushback. Large-scale replication efforts in recent years have found the effect of mindset interventions on real-world outcomes, like grades, to be considerably smaller and less consistent than early. Highly popularized studies suggest critics argue that simply telling people to adopt a growth mindset without also changing the actual structures, opportunities, and resources around them can amount to a fairly shallow intervention, occasionally even veering into blaming individuals for struggles rooted in generally fixed external circumstances. There have also been concerns about oversimplification in popular culture. Mindset has, in many workplaces and schools, been reduced to a slogan or a poster, stripped to a wax much more careful. Conditional research about exactly when and how mindset shifts actually produce meaningfully behavioral change. So why does a 2006 psychological framework still matter today? Because growth mindset has become one of the most widely adopted concepts in modern education and corporate training, shaping how feedback is given, how failure is discussed, and how resilience itself is taught to children and employees alike. Nearly every modern conversation about failing forward, embracing challenges, or reframing setbacks as learning opportunities traces directly back to Dweck's distinction. It also offers a useful correction to some of the more surface level self-help messaging around confidence. Mindset theory insists that belief alone isn't the goal. Belief is the specific, learnable process of improvement is what actually matters, distinguishing general resilience from empty positive thinking. So we've moved from Carnegie's outward skill of connecting with others through Maslow's map of growth, Bandura's belief in capability, Mihaly's experience of full engagement, and now to Dweck's account of what lets a person keep going, specifically through the failures that inevitably occur along that entire path. But mindset theory focuses primarily on how an individual interprets their own effort and failure. It says less about the skill that as critical to sustained personal growth, how a person manages difficult emotions themselves in the moment, especially when a setback or threatens to become overwhelming rather than simply instructive. That question belongs to our next chapter, Daniel Goleman and the popularization of emotional intelligence, where we shift from believing you can grow to actually managing the feeling that arise while you try. Thank you very much and see you next time.